Not only are the Labour government stuffing up this current war with Iran, where they came so late to the party that they have all but destroyed the special relationship and embarrassed us across the globe, all under the guise of international law.
By the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. That island that you read about, it's taken 3-4 days for us to work out where we can land there. It would have been much more convenient landing there as opposed to flying many extra hours. So we are very surprised. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
Although the President and Keir Starmer have since apparently spoken since then. But instead of realising the mess that the Labour government have made of many domestic issues and concentrating on fixing those, a 400-page legal petition presented to the government in September last year and backed by up to 20 Labour backbenchers has re-emerged, demanding reparations for Palestine, as if they haven't got more pressing, serious issues to deal with right now. In an open letter to the Prime Minister by Britain Owes Palestine, around about the time that Keir Starmer recognised Palestine as a state.
As Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognises the state of Palestine.
Backed by the backbenchers, the letter demanded an apology for Britain's decision to withdraw from Palestine in 1948. It claimed that between 1917 and 1948, when Palestine was under the control of British forces, that our forces murdered and tortured Palestinians. It also stated that in 1947, Britain gave away Palestine, a land we have no right to give, even under the laws of the time. Sound familiar? International law, Chagos springs to mind. It went on to say, Britain must face its history and the role we played in creating this conflict. Britain unlawfully failed to recognise Arab self-determination. So instead of focusing on the latest financial mess that they've got us into, after Labour backbenchers scuppered any hope of a reduction in welfare spending, which is crippling this country, or instead of focusing on things that are currently happening in their own constituencies, these Labour backbenchers, 18 Labour MPs and one peer, including John McDonnell and Richard Burgon, dinosaurs as Jeremy Corbyn's cabinet, have time on their hands to focus on something that began over a decade ago and are demanding that we British taxpayers once again put our hands in our pockets to fork out for this guff. You couldn't make it up. They demanded Sir Keir Starmer apologise so that we can move towards healing an open wound, acknowledging wrongdoing and pay reparations for what they call a century of oppression. They cite international law. Oh dear, what a mess. The reason this is relevant now is because it appears that the government have not yet responded to it. And as it is a legal petition, the government could face judicial review proceedings at the High Court if it refuses to engage. Well, good luck getting a hearing. The courts are completely bogged down. The rest of the world must be laughing at us in disbelief. I love this country, but in between the dithering over whether we help our greatest ally, whose protection we rely on for our very own survival, it seems that this Labour government are intent on spending taxpayers' hard-earned cash on pie-in-the-sky nonsense and hiding behind international law that will prove to be to the detriment of this great nation. Can we please focus on the here and now?
We're living in a time of what feels like pretty significant social change, and it makes us question things that we've even taken for granted for decades. And one of those at the moment that people are wondering about is actually money. Is the money in your bank account safe? Should you be investing elsewhere? Are we looking at a potential global crash? What will it mean for your savings? Is there a way that you could be using your money that might be outside of government control even? Well, TallyMoney is potentially one solution. So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by the CEO and founder of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. What is TallyMoney?
Well, at TallyMoney, you basically get gold you can spend. So we give people an individual account in their name, everyday account. They get a sort code, an account number. They use that account just like they would pounds from their bank, but it's milligrams of gold that we brand as Tally.
Okay. Why would you do that, though? What is the benefit to the customer instead of just having a normal pound sterling account?
Gold's performance against the pound is above 11% per annum over the last 25 years on average. But we still need money in our daily lives, and we have savings. We know that it's good common sense and prudent to save up for things, not just living credit. You know, whether it's a holiday or a rainy day, your retirement planning, you need to have money in your life, basically, that you can rely on, that's dependable, that nobody meddles with, that nobody can weaponise against you, which is another element of government control when it's the government currency, which we could talk about another time. And it should be pretty simple and straightforward, and that's what we deliver at Tally. And really, we just want people to feel safe and happy with their money. There was a time when the bigger your bank balance, the more confident you felt. Now it's like, I need to do something with it. I can't leave it there. In Tally, you can.
OK, brilliant. Cameron Parry from TallyMoney, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bev.
So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to reopen drilling in the North Sea and ditch net zero? Experts have warned that the country may have as little as 2 days' worth of gas in storage caused by the conflict in the Middle East and also by a lack of storage facilities as supplies begin to dry up, and there is likely to be a knock-on effect on oil prices as well. But we'll debate, is it time to reopen drilling in the North Sea and ditch net zero? Then for the second Great British Debate of this hour, I'm asking, is David Lammy right to curb jury trials? The Justice Secretary is said to be facing a rebellion of up to 80 Labour MPs over his reforms to the justice system. But should he not just reverse all that his proposed changes? We'll be debating that. So in the Great British Debate, I'm asking, is David Lammy right to curb jury trials? All of that is on the way. Your thoughts, your comments, gvnews.com/your say. Well, I'm joined now by political commentator Fahima Mohammed, who I'm sure will tell me that I'm talking absolute nonsense. Fahima, what are your thoughts on that? Look, come on, recognising Palestine as a state, I mean, should he have done that? And then these Labour MPs and backbenchers rehashing something to have a discussion and debate about it, about reparations. I mean, really, is this what we've become?
It's not about what we have become. Acknowledging historical responsibility isn't some radical idea. Britain has done it before, whether in Kenya with the Mau Mau case in 2013 and other colonial contexts. You know, you talk about this as being a historical thing. Unfortunately, just because some platforms don't actually report this and it's not headlined as and it should be given sort of, you know, the attention, Israel and Palestine right now are still in conflict, even after a so-called sort of ceasefire. And it's not just about Gaza, it's about the West Bank, which is still illegal settlements that's happening. And as well as when you talk about the time of the actual Britain ruling between the British mandate in Palestine between 1917 and 48, they actually did leave it unresolved. And it also during the time of that, obviously there were sort of, these kind of like horrific, atrocities that has been reported. But even in 1948, when Israel were welcomed, majority were Palestinian, but there were 700,000 people that were displaced and told to leave Palestine. And it has been commemorated for year after year, called the Nakba, until now. So it's not something that happens in history and it actually is resolved because we just forget about it and don't report about it. It is ongoing, and it's not to say that we want to, blame the British citizens of today or the government, but the recognition is also could be just a memorial, memorization, an apology, and some sort of recognition because of the displacement. And, it was occurred directly as Britain ended its mandate authority. So the argument for reparations is based on state responsibility for colonial government and governance decisions, not blaming modern British citizens or going into the taxpayers', pockets. It's nothing to do with that. So acknowledging Britain's role does not also deny the Jewish history or the existence of Israel. So we need to make this very, very clear that this debate is whether Britain accepts responsibility for the political system it created and left unresolved.
All right, well, let's talk about Palestine, because presumably that includes Gaza and parts of the West Bank and so on and so forth, right? How much aid do you think that the UK has given to the Palestinians in 1 year, so for 2023 and 2024?
I'm not sure of the figures of the aid that's been given.
That's 100 million in humanitarian support already, yeah?
But that is current.
Yeah, but the point is that throughout all of this period, the UK has given humanitarian support and aid to Palestine. So is that not part of, I hear you might feel there should be some sort of reparation. I don't agree with that. I think that, the time has passed. I don't believe that anything is owed in any way, shape or form. I think the UK has contributed lots and lots of aid to these countries anyway. So why is it that people seem to be coming back for more all the time, even though throughout history, the UK has given plenty of aid to Palestine?
Again, this is not about aid in the current situation, which is slightly different. And this is a demand.
Well, why is it different? Why is it different? If you're giving aid to a country and you've been giving it that aid, why is that not included? If people are insisting on reparations, I don't agree that you should be paying reparations. I think that, as you said, there were lots of other countries that were involved in delineating parts of the Middle East. It wasn't just the UK. But what about all the aid that the UK has already given to Palestine? I just think that, quite seriously, it's not as if it's been abandoned and given nothing.
Well, like I said, that's for what's occurring now. But at the end of the day, we also have to recognize history, and it's nothing to do with politics. It's to do with the fact that, even if you want to bring in today's assistance, it still doesn't take away from the fact that 700,000, if not more, have been displaced before, and the atrocities that happened within the mandate and the actual British colonialism of Palestine and, being part of it in that particular period. We cannot bring one case or make two cases into one just because it's now. It's just like with anything, whether you talk about history or now, you would separate the both. And we're not talking about just monetary sort of reparations either. It's about memorial recognition, people that still cannot go back there. There are people in the US that can go and buy property and live in Israel right now who's never been born, never have any association. But the Palestinians for decades who've been born, brought up, and even had passports from before that was recognized as Palestinian cannot go back now. So what does that say? It is an ongoing thing, and it's unfair, and it needs obviously some more than even recognition. And whether you agree with reparations or not, it is unfair to the Palestinians and the diaspora who are still struggling to go back to their homeland up till today. And there's illegal settlements that nobody wants to talk about. There's also still bombings. There's also attacks against the Palestinians continuously that's going on throughout, decades and continuous after ceasefire.
Yeah, but it's not all that's not all by the United Kingdom. There's loads of countries that were involved in that. I mean, where do you start with all of that? When there's war on and there's all these sort of, troops from Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Sudan also participated in fighting under Egyptian command during that time, and the role of Britain, well, we mandated the territory ended and we withdrew our forces, but there's lots of other nations that got involved, including the Soviet Union. I just think that it's a nonsense to expect countries after having, had historic conflict to then have to continuously pay reparations to each other, in particular when you are giving these countries aid and assisting them in many other ways. I just don't see the point. I think it's too messy. Who pays for it and how is it going to work? It's the same as reparations during the slave trade as well. I think it just doesn't make any sense to me now. We need to focus on rebuilding and helping these nations here and now. I don't believe that you can actually seriously come up with a figure that would be realistic. Let's talk about Donald Trump there, because Keir Starmer, at the beginning of the legal, I talked about Keir Starmer and the fact that I believe he's made a bit of a mess of things. But now him and Donald Trump have spoken and discussed military cooperation. Do you think that Keir Starmer was right in the way he has dealt with the situation?
I don't normally agree with Keir Starmer, but I think in this occasion he was looking out for Britain in itself. And I think not having, being an ally to the US doesn't mean that you are a puppy dog and listen to everything that they say and jump when they say how high and whenever it's done. We have to understand our economic position. We have to understand our military and our bases and what the capabilities are. And more importantly, this war was something that even the US claimed that it has absolutely no legalities. Forget even international law, which no one wants to recognize. recognize anyway, but their own sort of defense and military, as well as, their own governments are speaking against and wanting to impeach Trump for doing this. So we have to look at it as more as nuance, as in, we should just back our allies to do whatever it is that they wish. And Trump himself is not really doing anything right now, whether it's the tariffs, whether it's ICE killings, or even now with this war, is being seen as legal in their own constituents, in their own legal system, let alone even international law. So I think Keir Starmer has done the right thing, and he's protecting the British people themselves. And also, if you are also for the war in Iran, then you should also be happy to accept all the refugees that have come out of it. These things don't just happen in a vacuum, nor does it just end just by entering and finishing, and then also there's no implications and repercussions and all of the things that come afterwards. And it doesn't just last for a couple of years, but decades later, just like in Palestine.
Okay, no, hold on. So, what would you have done? Because do you want the Iranians to carry on killing their own people? I hear you citing international law and humanitarian grounds would actually enable the intervention, if I'm honest, Fahima. What would you have done then? You just sit by and just allow them to kill each other or to kill their own people? About 40,000 people massacred in 2 days?
Well, that figure, again, has not been verified, and I'm not saying that therefore any atrocity.
30,000, 40,000, listen, no, 30,000, 40,000, give or take a few thousand. There's still thousands. Hang on, no. That's a bit flip, I would say, because that's thousands and thousands of people. I might not get the exact number verified, but if we were talking about Palestine, you'd be on there telling me figures that have come from Hamas that haven't been verified. So I'm giving you figures from Iran, roughly somewhere between 30 to 40,000 people. We know they're killing thousands. So what would you have done? How is that acceptable? You just sit by and allow it?
Well, I won't go and add to the killings by bombing the actual infrastructure.
Well, but if you don't stop...
air bombing.
Well, you're not really adding, because what will happen is if you don't do anything, they'll continue to kill.
So hang on,
you yourself would be telling me, 1,200 Israelis, but 30, 40,000 people from Gaza. I'm telling you that maybe 1,200 people may have been killed over this, but in terms of their intervention, and mostly, I would presume, military targets, I'm looking at the 40,000 people that their own regime are killing of their own people. That's a lot.
Well, again, that is a claim of the own regime. It has been hijacked. There's other claims and there's other people that have said that have come in there. And that's how I would see it. But again, I would not bomb even further if there's already bombs that are existing or atrocities that exist.
What would you do? What would you do?
Well, as an outsider, you don't get involved in another person's war.
You do nothing.
It's not about nothing.
Well, what would you do? You just said as an outsider. What would you do?
They've had other regimes who are committing similar atrocities across the GCC, across the Gulf states. No one does anything.
So because there are other regimes doing it is fine. Listen, Fahima, he's doing something. He's doing something.
He's not doing it for the people.
What would you do?
It for his own security and his own sort of, wanting oil or reserves or whatever it may be.
But you've already told me that you've already told me that his own
country.
But you already told me that his own people aren't happy with it, Fahima. So if that's the argument, that's not worked for him, has it? So, I'm asking you what you would do, and by the sounds of it, it sounds like you'd sit by it, and I don't know, I just think I'd have to do something.
If I was in that position, I would do a lot more, but I wouldn't go bombing, because at the end of the day, I don't see that ever resolving any sort of country. We've seen in the past in history, all it does is brings more atrocities and also more radicalization, and the regime change doesn't happen. Air bombing either.
All right, I hear you, but there's a lot of... No, they wouldn't speak. No, they wouldn't. You're trying to have diplomacy while someone's massacring their own people. Listen, Fahima Mohammed, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your thoughts. That's political commentator Fahima Mohammed. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua.